I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. This episode is sponsored by Ahrefs. If you're new, Confessions runs a little counterintuitive for a podcast about SEO. This is a short-form, one-way chat about anything and everything in SEO that isn't overtly some trick or hack to get to the number one spot on page one. Not that what I talk about won't include the things that can help you do that. I just don't believe that getting to page one safely and sustainably has anything to do with hacks or tricks to get you there. Also, I believe we need a more broader understanding of search engines better than we do, and especially now that we're staring AI down into the eyes. Now, these the updates especially, when it comes to helpful content, we just have to remember that marketing is more than a website. You should expect plain talk with no engineering mumbo jumbo, and for our time together to be around 15 minutes, because we've all got work to do, and as we know, this SEO work doesn't get done by itself. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 22 of Confessions. This is almost that time of year when I move this Babette's Feast, to the mountains for the summer, what I call Confessions Mountain Edition. Of course, this year it'll be called that plus 2025. Now, that's going to start with next week's episode. Now, as far as last week's, if you haven't listened to it, it was about a website that really, I think, took a heavy damage from the helpful content. And I also want to say it's so important to support publishers and creators who share their often frustrating experience on something that typically feels like an SEO failure. Now, I don't see it that way, but I can see that it can feel that way. Now, I'm so grateful to those who step up, not just in SEO, but in life, and share their experiences, because it also reminds us that we're not alone. So I'm going to put the link in the description. So all of you bloggers out there that still don't know what hit you, check out last week's episode. It's called The Demise of Demarge. Now, I'd like to thank Ahrefs again for being the sponsor of this episode. And I love their Site Explorer tool that's part of every plan. It's the cornerstone of my forensic work. This type of data is often where I start, which is performance data based on organic traffic for a site. Now, the history of a site can say a lot. And if it's a site you want to know more about, but you don't have access with Search Console, this kind of tool is invaluable. And there are so many fascinating use cases to view this type of data. They even have it where you can drop down into comparing the historical ranking of organic keywords for yourself as well as others. So expect me to continue to unpack this feature as we move into the summer. Today I'm going to talk about AI, but not in the giddy, look what I made kind of rapture. There is a dark side to AI, and not that I think it will take over or anything, but perhaps it's more precisely Google's use of AI in relation to our favorite marketing tool, SEO. So you remember the old saying, what's mine is mine and what's yours is negotiable? Well, this episode is called What's Mine is Mine and What Yours is Mine Too. Just so you don't spend a lot of time in your minds wondering what subtopics I might be talking about, I want to give you just a quick rundown. I did a little bot check with the help of my business partner that I'd like to use to illustrate the mechanics. Then I'm going to touch on my latest large view of how we, with our sites, we made Google search actually a thing, and how Google seems to have shifted from being a curator of our content to basically seeing themselves as a corpus owner. And to cap it off by sharing an article written by Jenny Abuyabaya, who is with SEO Sherpa. And she has one hot take on what it might be a way to kind of get Google to kind of get over their bad selves. Now, many of you know I live in a Googlebot world. I've been studying, observing, researching, indexing, reading server logs, Search Console, and they may kind of all seem unrelated, But the common thread with all of them is the Google bots and how we know who's coming and what they're doing. So last month, my business partner, Kelly Colby, and I were having an AI conversation. And when it comes to AI questions and problems, Kelly bears the brunt of my learning curve. For those that are not really sure about AI, I may not be completely perfect in this, but I'm going to describe you in general where I come from. AI is not from outer space. It's us. AI has to be trained or directed, you might say. And those documents it's trained on documents. And it comes with some ability to take in information. But ultimately, we get back to it's trained on the things that we did, things that we do. Initially, everyone was in awe of its writing content because, well, unless you're really passionate about what you're writing can be a real drag. Who can really get emotional about backflow inspections? Plus, like most things, there's always a downward pressure when it comes to the cost of paying to get things done. Why pay a writer when I can have AI write my articles? That's logical, understandable, practical, up to a point. And that last part is from me. I'll just say one word: hallucinations. That's what they call it when, in a very confident manner, an AI, large language model, that's what they call them, LLM, goes off and spouts off nonsense, something that's made up, something that if you didn't check it, you could be in trouble. Now, I use it to provide, when I say it, I mean AI. I use AI to provide validation to me on the conclusions that I've come to based on what I believe that I'm seeing in data. For instance, last week's episode, I used Google LLM, so I didn't have to put up with possible hallucinations. So these are the things Kelly and I talk about, and she's working on a whole host of AI and automation type things. So I asked her if she would play with me and pick any or all of the LLMs she has access to, and let's run a query and see what happens. And we were going to use one of my sites. So basically, this was a test set up where I put hidden fake keywords in the HTML of a site to check for a couple of things. One, what did these AI crawlers send to get the information? What was the bot? Two, do they crawl visible content only, or do they crawl source content? So we left JavaScript out of it. Long conversation, leave that out. And three, basically, were they accurate, in terms of the actual test keyword, or did they make something up? Fairly straightforward. So I'm going to describe to you the things that happened. There were a few of them that came with calling cards. You could clearly identify them in the server logs. They had their names in the crawl, in the string. And it's kind of like when they came, it was almost like they waved at me, and their answers were correct. And then there were a few that came like a spy in a trench coat. They pretended to be a regular visit. Oh, don't bother me. I'm just a nobody. And they walked in like they owned the place and left. And their answers were correct. And this last one was a really interesting part. One of them didn't show up at all in the server logs, and their answers were correct. You see why I would find that really interesting. So who better to inquire about that kind of possibility than AI itself? And it kind of went something like this, and of course I paraphrase. So me, hey, you correctly answered the question, but I couldn't find in the server log any visits to the pages that I asked you about to look for me. Why is that? AI, I have ways to get information. Me, okay, what are they? AI, I cannot tell you. Me, okay, why can you not tell me? AI, I also cannot tell you that. And me, are you saying that you can visit a site but not have that visit recorded in server logs? AI. Maybe me. So you're telling me that you have some agreement with hosting companies that let you sneak into sites to get information, but yet not have your visits recorded. AI. Oh, look at the time. I'm all done. Come back tomorrow. Now, this particular behavior disturbs me since I saw what I'm about to say, and I realized it would be interesting in this context. So I remember seeing some quote from someone, and I apologize, someone associated at Google in regards to all the LLMs being able to search Google to find answers to the questions that they received from askers. And it was like we didn't know that we, Google, had a corpus, meaning our site is being used, but never mind, it's like they didn't actually admit that their site, their search result pages are composed of our sites and our content on those sites. And all those AI overlays are answering questions. So the searcher has their answer, but the website has no visitor. There's no way for that business who spent the time and invested in creating that content to capitalize on their knowledge and expertise, or have the opportunity to gain maybe someone through the sharing of their email in exchange for something, or even just sign up on a list with a text number, phone number. So this brings me to Jenny and her article in LinkedIn. The title of it was called Google Broke the Unspoken Contract, and no one's talking about it. She had just returned from a Google Marketing Live where everyone was applauding the demo of, I'm going to quote her, an interface designed to keep your audience from ever needing to visit your site again. Now, you really need to read the article. The link is in the description. But basically, this was the premise. The original deal, and I'm quoting from her article, the deal was simple. We create content, Google crawls it, in return they send us traffic. That was the exchange, unspoken maybe, but it was very real. They, meaning Google, were the librarian, we were the authors. They didn't own the books, they just pointed readers towards them. We accepted Googlebot with open arms, let them crawl our pages, cache our content, index our lives, because we trusted the contract. But now everything has changed. And she puts it in pretty stark terms. The writing is fantastic, by the way. The librarian is rewriting the books and slapping their own name on the cover. Yes. So basically, with Google crawling and scraping our content, Google is no longer sending those sites traffic, our sites traffic. Makes it kind of wonder, who owns our content? When we look at bloggers and content creators and educators and everybody, it's kind of like, how does that feel, right? And so again, I'm going to quote because it's, like I say, written so well. When the answer lies in Google, your content doesn't just get deranked. It gets absorbed into the machine. And once that happens, ... Now, I really want people to read and comment on her article, but I can relate to one of the solutions she proposed, which was, what if every site blocked Googlebot entirely? I heard someone else on YouTube propose this, and the audience kind of gasped. Isn't it odd that no one talks about this? I mean, when it comes to intellectual property, in any other industry, there would be litigation. And Jenny does provide some concrete action to take, even if you're not going to block the Googlebot. This is quite an article, and I hope you will seek it out. To quote her again, do not wait for Google to steal your lunch. So it's a content strategy, but it's not the one we've been sweating over. Anyway, thanks for being a listener. That's it for me this week. Thank you to Ahrefs for being the sponsor of this episode. Check out the link in the description and start using the site Explorer, not just on your site, but maybe your competitors. If you've got questions about your site and you need a fresh take on why things are happening or not happening as they should, reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Check out Indexilla. It's my indexing platform to get content and backlinks indexed. It's completely within Google's terms of service and safe for your money site. You can find it at indexilla.io. And check out my indexation research project, Crawl or No Crawl, on Substack. You get daily status reports based on data to answer the question, is it me or is indexing off today? I will see you next week for more SEO conversations, observations, and testing. If you have any questions about today's topic, you can reach out and text your question to confessions at 512-222-3132. Thanks again, and until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.